Welcome everyone to our UC Davis Grad Slam competition. I am Jean-Pierre Delplanque. I serve as Vice Provost and Dean of Graduate Studies, and I'm honored to have you all here for this event. We at Graduate Studies were so proud of this annual UC-wide competition because it brings an opportunity to highlight the hard work, research, and scholarship that our graduate students have. For UC Davis in particular, this year's competition is a special one. This year, Graduate Studies is celebrating 100 years of graduate education in Davis. That's because in the fall of 1925, the first 12 graduate students arrived on the Davis campus to study vegetable crops. Not a huge surprise there. Today, graduate education at UC Davis comprises over 7,000 graduate students working across more than 100 programs. A lot has changed in the last century, obviously, but the power and impact of our graduate students remains. And we're going to take an opportunity later in the program to honor our centennial by hosting a 100th panel. We have invited our previous Grad Slam winners going all the way back to 2015, we didn't go 100 years back, to join us for a virtual conversation about the importance of this event in graduate education overall, which is particularly timely. We will host this panel after this year's top 10 presentations, which is the core of the event. And so we have a lot in store today, and we should get started. For those unfamiliar with the competition, Grad Slam challenges graduate students to condense hundreds of hours of research and scholarship into just a single 3-minute presentation and at most one slide. Today we get to hear from our 10 campus finalists who have excelled in this challenge. Our UC Davis top 10 were selected by a panel of judges from a very large and competitive submission pool. I should probably advance the slide here. There we go. Based on our student presentations today, we will award first, second, and third prize, plus one special award, the People's Choice Award, selected by our audience at the end of the program. I'll give you more details about that as we get closer. In fact, I'll do that right now. Those of you who are here, you'll be able to scan a QR code on the screen. Those of you online will have a link posted in the chat box and you'll be able to use that to register your vote. The first place winner selected today will go on to compete in the UC system-wide final round to be held at the UC Student and Policy Center in Sacramento on April 22nd. So that's going to be relatively shortly after this competition. Before I introduce our judges and contestants, I want to thank our Grad Slam sponsors, the Grad Pathway Institute for Professional Development, the Office of Research, Global Affairs, and Rinki Sethi, Chief Security and Strategy Officer at Upwind Security, and one of our Graduate Studies Advisory Board members. So let's thank them all. Thank you for your support of graduate education. I want to take a moment now to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people. Today, there are 3 federally recognized Patwin tribes: the Kachil-Dehi Band of Wintun Indians of the Colusa Indian Community, the Quetzal-Dehi Wintun Nation, and the Yocha-Dehi Wintun Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of the land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We're honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional land. It is now my pleasure to introduce our judges for this year. Judges, I'm not going to ask you to stand up, just wave when I call your name. Dr. Simon Atkinson. Dr. Simon Atkinson serves as Vice Chancellor for Research at UC Davis. He previously served as Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Kansas from 2019 to 2023. In addition to research administration at KU, his portfolio included oversight of 11 research centers and the KU Natural History Museum. Simon is a molecular cell biologist recognized for studies in the cellular mechanism and prevention and treatment of acute kidney injury. He has taught cell biology to undergraduate students, graduate students, and medical students. In 2005, he co-founded Infotron, a life science company. Dr. Atkinson earned his PhD in molecular biology from the University of Cambridge and his bachelor's in cell and molecular biology from King's College London. He was also a postdoctoral fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. Sarah Colwell. Sarah is the CEO of SC2 Strategic Communication and is a nationally recognized communication and marketing professional. She started a career in news media, working for newspapers and television companies in California. Her husband's Army career took her first to Colorado and then to Alabama before she came to UC Davis. At UC Davis, she led the university-wide communication and marketing strategy for the university $1 billion fundraising campaign. She has received numerous awards for her work and has been featured as a speaker at national conferences. Rinki Sethi. Rinki is the Chief Security and Strategy Officer at Upwind Security, where she leads Upwind's global information security and technology functions to ensure its internal security reflects the same level of industry-leading excellence that they deliver to customers. Rinki served on the board of directors of several companies, including ForgeRock and Voltree. She brings decades of security and technology leadership expertise and was recently VP and CISO at Twitter and Rubrik Incorporated. She earned her bachelor in computer science engineering from UC Davis and her master's in information security from Capella University. Outside of work, Rinki spends time with her family and loves to travel, exercise, and watch the Golden State Warriors. Who doesn't? Davis Mayor Donna Neville. Mayor Neville was first elected at the Davis City Council in June 2023 in a special election and re-elected in November 2024. She began her term as mayor this year. Donna came to Davis in 1987 to attend law school at UC Davis. She then has remained active in public service. She worked for the Office of the Legislative Council, where she advised staff on K-12 public education and environmental protection. She served as chief counsel to the California State Auditor and was chief counsel to the State Board of Education. She's committed to supporting our city and Davis community. Dr. Gordon Walker. Dr. Gordon Walker is an award-winning speaker, science communicator, published author, and social media star with over 3 million cumulative followers. He has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology from UC Davis, where he studied the microbial ecology of wine fermentation and yeast genetics. He's a passionate advocate for mushrooms, fungal conservation, and environmental sustainability. His book, Passport to Kingdom Fungi, has transformed the way people learn about mushrooms and fungi, serving as the go-to resource for a whole new generation of mycophiles and people interested in foraging, food, and fermentation. Amy Young. Amy Young spent many years managing genetics laboratories in the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine and the Department of Animal Science before moving into science communication and research administration. She has authored numerous scientific publications, book chapters, and outreach material. She's a member of the National Association of Science Writers. In her current role as the outreach and research manager at the UC Davis Center for Equine Health, she translates information about cutting-edge treatments and technologies in veterinary medicine to a wide variety of audiences. With a strong background in both research and communication, she brings extensive experience evaluating and presenting science to broad audiences. Thank you, judges, for supporting our graduate students today. And now I'm so excited to introduce our 2026 UC Davis Grad Slam Top 10. Students, please stand when your name is called, or wave, whatever you prefer. Eli Elster, PhD student in anthropology. Rachel Key, PhD student in communication. Priyash Yadav, master student in computer science. Jack Goon, PhD student in immunology. Bhargav Joshi, PhD candidate in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Supatirada Wongchanla, PhD candidate in animal biology. Eden Winslow, PhD candidate in biomedical engineering. Alex Neupauer, PhD student in integrative genetics and genomics. Devi Jayukrishnan, PhD candidate in molecular, cellular, and integrative physiology. Mark Salazar, PhD candidate in pharmacology and toxicology. And I'd like to personally, just take a second to personally thank our all the graduate students who submitted to this year's competition. It was a much larger group and it was very competitive. It's a great honor to be able to see, even if it's just for a few minutes, the incredible research and scholarship that they are doing at UC Davis. So at this time, I would like to invite the first speaker to present. The order of this year's presentation was decided at random. Please help me welcome our first presenter, Eli Elster.
Thanks. In 1970, Richard Nixon described magic mushrooms as public enemy #1. Shockingly, he was not a very trustworthy source. Psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, is now proving to be one of our most effective treatments for diseases like depression and addiction. You've probably heard news stories about this medical revolution. Some people call it the psychedelic renaissance. I like that term. It's super catchy. But it hides something odd about the clinical trials that have been run so far. They all follow exactly the same structure. A patient takes a large dose of psilocybin, puts on an eye mask and headphones, lies down, and spends several hours listening to mostly classical music. We know psilocybin is a miracle drug. Is this the only way, or even the best way for us to use it? The truth is, we don't know. Clinicians have tried this one technique on a small subset of conditions, and otherwise, not much else. For all the hype about psilocybin, we've only just begun to explore its full potential. But as with other medicines, we might be walking in known territory. As an anthropologist, I study how psychedelics are used by indigenous societies around the world. In many cases, they've been experimenting with these compounds for centuries, or even millennia. They taught us about quinine and aspirin. Imagine what we could learn if we asked them about psilocybin, too. But there's a problem. No indigenous group in the entire world has ever been observed using magic mushrooms as medicine. Until recently, when a group of mycologists documented a new species of magic mushroom in Lesotho, a small country in southern Africa. Alongside that documentation, they mentioned rumors that the mushroom was being used by traditional healers as medicine. Now, as my advisor likes to say, big if true, so I traveled to Lesotho myself to find out if the mushrooms were, in fact, being used as medicine, and if so, how. Over the last 6 months, I've spoken to dozens of healers throughout Lesotho, and the findings have been remarkable. The mushroom is being used as medicine. That on its own is incredibly exciting. But what's especially intriguing is just how differently they're used compared to how we've applied psilocybin in the West. Typically, healers give their patients a small dose of the mushroom over days, weeks, or even months, and they often combine it with other psychoactive plants. What's most intriguing is that they use the mushrooms to treat conditions that we haven't explored at all in Western psychedelic medicine, including epilepsy and psychosis. The medical model we have for psilocybin is powerful, but these use cases, and the many others that are surely out there waiting to be documented, suggest paths for us to look beyond it. Through my fieldwork, I want to help initiate a psychedelic renaissance that is genuinely deserving of the name. Thank you.
Got a few questions for you.
Please.
Could you tell us a little bit more about use of these mushrooms in Lesotho in a religious context?
Yeah. So there are a number of strictly medicinal uses. In a religious context, people who are being initiated into the tradition of healing, who are becoming shamans, might be the word, also use the mushroom regularly in small doses over the course of their training to, as they put it, thin the veil between themselves and the spirits they're trying to connect with.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know, I mean, how far back does this go?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm working with archaeologists at the University of Stellenbosch to run biochemical and genetic studies on artifacts to see if we can find firm evidence of long-term use. But the healers I've spoken to all report learning these techniques from much older individuals well before the modern advent of psychedelics in the West. So it seems very, very likely that this has been going on for a long time. Yeah.
So you've been to Lesotho?
Yes, yeah.
You have any plans or scientific need to go back or other places that would be relevant?
Yeah, one of the main healers I worked with in Lesotho, a man named Sefako, offered to initiate me as a shaman, so that's something I potentially plan to do in the future. But there's also potentially use cases in Zimbabwe. A new species of psilocybin mushroom was found there as well, and nobody has spoken to the healers in that area about potential uses. So Lesotho in the future, certainly, and Zimbabwe as well.
Oh, okay. How long does the initiation take?
It varies from healer to healer, so that's a question I'll need to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have other interests besides what you do for research?
Yeah, I think generally I'm interested in altered states of consciousness in general, the fact that we occupy this one cognitive mode but can shift into so many others, not just using psychedelics, but things like music, breath work, and other techniques. So I'm very interested in trying to understand how it is that we can shift ourselves from one mode of consciousness to another, and what that tells us about the roots of consciousness in the brain.
All right. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you.
Now I am pleased to welcome Rachel Key.
Stop strolling 1 hour before bedtime. Blue light is killing your sleep. No devices allowed in the bedroom. Bed is for sleep, not Netflix. You've heard it. You've probably even liked to post about it. And then you strolled in bed anyway. Why? If we know screens ruin sleep, why are millions of us still using them every single night? Sleep is not optional. Poor sleep increases risk for diabetes, depression, even Alzheimer's disease. So the advice seems simple. Remove screens from the bedroom. But here's the catch. The same devices we're told are destroying our sleep are where we listen to calming rain sounds, bedtime meditations, and that comfort show you've already rewatched 10 times. Sometimes screens wind us up. Other times, they calm us down. So are screens the villain, or is the story more complicated? Scientists explain this tension through two competing ideas. One suggests that media displaces sleep, that every minute spent scrolling is a minute stolen from rest. The other suggests that media can help us recover, that certain content can ease us into sleep instead of away from it. That's the gap. We don't understand where and how media is interacting, and so we need to understand it at a better level with higher levels of measurement. And that's where my research comes in. We needed better forms of measurement. And so what I did was build a research app that allows us to, and that's where my research comes in. We needed better measurement. And sleep research has attention right now. And what that is we either bring people into the lab where we could measure sleep precisely, or we use self-reports where that's not, very accurate. And so what I was wondering is how can we get sleep data that is highly accurate, but not necessarily from an artificial setting. And so I created a research app. And this app automatically tracks sleep data. It captures what people do on their phones before bed, and it also allows us to get their daily reports about how they feel. And this is where we are now starting to validate. So we have a validation system. It's brain activity that we put in. It's brain activity that is going on for the lab. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you. Sorry.
You want to come? Talk.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, good Lord.
Well, maybe something about the app that you developed.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, if I look at my phone, and sometimes I do, there seems to be some measures, some ways to measure screen time and things like that. So why did you choose to develop a separate app? Why wasn't the existing features enough or sufficient?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your question. So yeah, mostly there's ecological momentary assessment apps, which are EMA studies. So it's pinging surveys multiple times a day for certain people receiving this. And so I was actually quoted $9,000 for a 3-month use as a grad student discount. And for me, I think that's a little bit out of my price range. And so essentially what we did, I'm the communication department, and we have very computational methods. And so I decided, well, if it's going to cost me an arm and a leg, I might as well make that myself. And so essentially, I took some Coursera classes. I was going on, ChatGPT, trying to understand how to code. And over the last year, it took a lot of work, but I was able to actually develop a native app for iOS and Apple. And it works with Apple Watches and iPhones, and it allows us to get that data. And Apple specifically is extremely stingy with giving us screen time data. And so this is a way around that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You had no coding experience before that?
Only for analyses, statistical analyses,
right.
yeah. So.
What other type of science communication are you interested in?
Yeah, do you mean, sorry, communication science or science? Two different things. So science
Yes.
communication,
Yes.
yeah, I'm a big advocate for public science communication. I actually have a little Instagram. I try and communicate science concepts easily in a digestible way. Usually I don't choke up like the way I did today, but and I think this is really important because, like, for example, I'm a first-generation student, and so I think it's really important for me to be able to communicate my ideas and the things that all of these amazing students do at UC Davis and other universities to the lay audience in a way that they can understand.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
I'm now pleased to welcome Priyash Yadev.
Imagine sitting in your living room, the same couch, the same sunlight through the window, a commercial place for your favorite snack, something that you've enjoyed your whole life. You smile and say, add that to my grocery list. But recently, you developed an allergy to it, and you don't remember. For over 1 million Americans living with early stages of Alzheimer's, this isn't a one-time mistake. It's every day. Missing meals, medicines, leaving the stove on, small decisions that possess real risk. And when situations like these occur, families have to face a difficult choice, keeping their loved ones home, where everything is familiar, where their life happened, or move them to assisted living, where newer environments can increase confusion and accelerate cognitive decline. But what if that didn't have to be a choice? My team built iCare, a remote caregiving platform used by caregivers and individuals to manage their daily tasks. But during testing, we found that even simplified apps still require steps, and these steps become barriers for someone with cognitive decline. So I asked a different question. What if the system could adapt to the person instead of the person adapting to the system? And that's why I built AI Care. AI Care builds on iCare. It lets you manage your daily tasks just by speaking naturally. No menus, no steps to remember, just talking. Let's get back to that example. Now they say, add this to my grocery list. But now, AI Care checks first. It checks caregiver-approved records for allergies, medications, and dietary needs as the source of truth. So, if something isn't safe, it doesn't just block it. It responds like someone who remembers for you, a family member who'd say, hey, you're allergic to that. How about we find something safer? And that's the key difference. Most voice assistants like Alexa or Siri can follow your instructions, but they don't account for your personal medical context. AI Care does. Under the hood, I designed a safety-aware system powered by large language AI models. And instead of relying on general world knowledge, each response is grounded on person-specific data, which is updated and maintained by the caregivers. So the people they care for can live longer, independent at a place they call home, because no one should have to choose between staying safe and staying home. When memory fades, care shouldn't. Thank you.
Can I ask what motivated you to develop this app?
Yeah, so when I joined UC Davis, I was looking for labs to join, and I met with Dr. Weekly, and she is already working with Alzheimer's patients. And the thing was that there's already a lot of research going on the causes of Alzheimer's, but we should also look for developing tools for the population who are still having those conditions. So that's why I joined the lab and started working on eye care. And AI care is just an extension on that, so it's like a conversational layer on top of it.
Oh, okay, that's why I understand better your slide then. There was something on your slide which I'm sure will come up in a second.
Yeah.
That was my fault, I stepped on something.
I see.
The use of caregiver verified records,
Yeah.
That makes me think about protecting patient information and things like that. Do you have issues like that you had to deal with for this particular app?
Yeah, so securing the data is really important part. And whatever medications and allergies are there, we keep it in a secure system, like the architecture is designed in such a way. And those details are updated only by the caregivers. So caregivers could be the family members or the doctors. Okay. So not even the patients and not even the AI tool can edit it. They can only read it because if you have a memory problem, you might just edit something which is not correct.
That's right, yeah.
So,
yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am now pleased to welcome Jack Goon.
Two forces are fighting on a battlefield. Soldiers from each side are intermingled and brawling, while a general looks on from a nearby hill, squinting to see who is fighting who. Cancer is a battlefield, where T cells, the same white blood cells that help you fight off an infection like the flu, are fighting cancer cells. And researchers, we're like the general on the hill, trying to make sense of everything and design drugs to help T cells win. I study mouth cancer, and in recent years, we've had good success with drugs that block cancer cells' weapons, allowing T cells to clear tumors in around 20% of patients. But the other 80% don't see any benefit. Why is this the case? Well, cancer cells aren't alone. They recruit allies, so-called immunosuppressive cells, to fight by their side. We need to target these immunosuppressive cells, not just cancer cells. But what weapons are they using, and where are they on the battlefield? Researchers have been trying to visualize the cancer battlefield for decades. Traditionally, they do this by taking pictures of the tumor. These pictures show gene expression, where each gene gives us a little more information about the identity and weapons of the soldiers on the battlefield. So cells express thousands of genes to complete their complex mission, but these current technologies only image a handful of them. So we have an incomplete picture of each soldier. It's as if the general on the hill forgot his binoculars and can't tell who is fighting who, let alone which reinforcements to send to the T cells. So how can we do better? In my lab, we use a new technique called spatial transcriptomics to take a deep scan of the battlefield. The process starts with surgeons who remove a patient's tumor. That tumor is then treated with a chemical that freezes all cells in place. Then we cut a two-dimensional slice and take a picture. But it's more than just one picture. It's 5,000 pictures of the same tumor, each imaging a different gene. The resulting data is huge, and it's my task to conduct the data analysis. I start by identifying cells as T cells, cancer cells, or cancer allies. Then I create a map showing where each cell is, and a report on the cell's activities and weapons, like you see on the right. So far, I've analyzed 3 patient samples, and I found that T cells are often surrounded by cancer allies. And these surrounded T cells are less active and more deprived of oxygen. So maybe cancer allies are choking T cells as a battle strategy. With more patient samples, we'll gather more data like this to inform cancer drug design. And eventually, we can map every single patient's tumor to provide them with the individualized intel and treatment that they need to be cured. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
You did your bachelor at Davis, right?
I did.
Yes. What brought you back here for grad school?
Yeah, as an undergraduate, I did research in a few different labs, and I found that the collaborative environment here at Davis was really strong. And my personal experience was I sent my resume, which had like dishwashing on it, and professors just gave me a chance. I wasn't helping them at all, that they were just training me, and so I really appreciated that as well.
All right, that's good to hear. What does an average day of research look like for you?
Yeah, so obviously I said I do data analysis, so a lot of that is coding on my computer. And that's my experience as an undergraduate researcher. I was doing a lot of programming, but I'm also doing lab work to verify some of the results that we're finding in these spatial analyses. And so learning how to work in the wet lab and collaborating with others.
Oh, okay, sounds great. Can you tell us a little bit more about what motivates you to do this type of research?
Yeah, so two things. One is that cancer has always been a big factor in my life. I've had family members that have gone through cancer, and so it just means a lot to me. And then I have always found that computer science, in addition to biology, is a really strong combination, and that there's a lot of data that just hasn't been analyzed. So that really drives me to do my particular project.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome Bhargav Joshi.
Gasoline and diesel engine plants are powered by fossil fuels. Electric cars don't require combustion, but they still require charging. And charging requires electricity. And guess what? As of 2018, roughly 60% of the electricity generated in the United States comes from the combustion of natural gas and coal. So clearly combustion is important. Aircraft engines, rocket engines all require combustion. But combustion has a problem. Complete combustion leads to greenhouse gas emissions, and that's problematic. But things become worse when we talk about incomplete combustion. Incomplete combustion produces harmful pollutants like carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, soot. All of them are severely damaging for the human health and the environment. So we need to eliminate incomplete combustion before we can get to complete combustion. Currently, we use catalytic converters that eliminate harmful pollutants. But then catalytic converters also have limitations. They are expensive because they use platinum. And secondly, they don't tackle the heart of the problem, and that's incomplete combustion. So we need something that is cheaper and tackles the heart of the problem. And it turns out there is such an alternative. So recent studies have shown that if you install a magnet on the fuel inlet, it actually eliminates pollutants on the side of the engine exhaust. It also reduces the fuel consumption. So all in all, this is a good alternative because it helps us to improve the engine efficiency. But then, how exactly do we implement this? And they do not talk about the underlying physical phenomena. So that is what my research is all about. What I essentially do is I conduct experiments. I magnetize the fuel samples, and then I take a droplet from that fuel sample, and I try to study how the droplet evaporates under high temperature conditions. And then I compare that to untreated and non-magnetized droplets. If the magnetized droplets evaporate faster than the non-magnetized droplets, then that's the explanation. If the magnetized droplets evaporate faster, they promote better mixing. If there's better mixing, that leads to complete combustion and eliminates incomplete combustion. The reason why I focus on the physics of the phenomena, because once we know how something happens, we can basically optimize it and scale it to include emissions, not just from your car, but from the aircrafts and even the industrial exhausts. So I hope with my research, we will be able to take one step closer to create a cleaner world for all of us and for the future generations. Thank you.
Me too,
Oh,
not bad.
yeah.
Thank you. Well, I could geek out on droplet combustion, but I'm not a judge, so that's okay. Who came up with the idea of putting a magnet? I mean, where did the first idea come from?
I think this idea, I could find the researchers that go all the way back to 1992.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they don't really talk about the physics, and there were conflicting results in the literature that I found.
Right.
So I thought maybe I should experiment it myself and see if there is a statistical difference between the two. So that's my experimental setup that I use in the lab.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. What led you to mechanical and aerospace engineering?
Oh, that's a really good question. So since I was in the school, I was a part of aeronautics club. So I've always been inspired for rocket science or space sector. So I thought maybe I should pursue mechanical engineering. And then I came to Davis, and now I'm a PhD student in mechanical and aerospace. So it looks like I'm trying to accomplish my dream.
Right. Is that how you chose your research topic, or was there more narrow factors that led you to
Yes, correct. So I chose combustion because I'm interested in rocket science, and propulsion and combustion is a part of that. So I thought, yeah, maybe I should go for it. And then Professor Shaw was very helpful because he took me in his lab. So yeah, that was great help.
Right. What are your future goals? What do you want to do? You talked about space and...
Yeah, my childhood goal is to be an astronaut. But for now, after a PhD, I'm trying to go into academia or maybe industry, SpaceX, NASA, trying my way out.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're welcoming Supatarada Wongchonla, and I butchered your name again. I'm sorry for that.
It's correct, yeah. Good. Thank you. Have you ever felt sad when you miss your mom or when you were away from her? I have, and the piglets as well. But why? What happened to them? Well, to get you all the delicious bacon and the pork belly for the K-barbecue, the piglets, they need to be separated from their mom at a very young age. So the mom can go back to produce more babies. This is to meet the high demand of the pork. But what happened to these little piglets? They got super stressed. And when they got stressed, their body got weaker, and then they're easier to get bacterial infection. And then they have diarrhea. So when they have diarrhea, they don't grow well, and this could even kill them. And of course, the farmers, they don't like that because they are losing the money. So what would you do when you have diarrhea? You would seek for the medicine, right? The farmers, they think the same way. That's why in the past, they added the antibiotics into the pig's feed to help reduce the diarrhea. But here is the big issue. Because when you added too much of the antibiotics into the pig's feed, the bacteria in the gut, they become resistant to the antibiotics. It means the antibiotics cannot kill them anymore. And what's worse, when the pigs poop, these little bad guys, they spread out into the larger environment, and that impacts all of us. So this brings us to the significance of my research. We use glutamate instead of the antibiotics to help reduce the diarrhea. So what is glutamate? Glutamate is a natural amino acid that can be found in plenty kinds of food, and it is also a part of MSG as well that makes your food yummy. So when the glutamate is in the gut, it helps to boost the gut immunity. And the question is, what if we just feed extra glutamate to the piglets when they are having diarrhea? Maybe it helps the gut to be stronger and then fight off the bacteria and then reduce the diarrhea. So we don't need the antibiotics in the farms anymore. So my research, we fed extra glutamate to the piglets when they were having diarrhea. And you know what? It really helps. It helps to reduce the diarrhea and helps them to grow better as well. So we don't need to use the antibiotics anymore. So my research is not just about getting you all the delicious bacons for your breakfast, but also help to protect our environment from these little bad guys, and also help to create a safer world for our future and the next generation. Thank you.
A question that I'm sure you're getting a lot. Is this safe for the pigs? Is this safe for
It is safe,
us?
yes. It's just the natural amino acid. It can be found in several things,
Okay.
like almost everything that you eat.
All right.
It contains the glutamate, but do not put too much.
How many pigs do you, well, in fact, I probably should have asked you how your research is structured. I imagine you interact with pigs.
Yes.
How many?
The first one was 47, and the second one we had 65.
Wow. Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite?
Sorry?
Do you have a favorite? Do you give them names?
We do. We have the favorite, and we named them Mocha. They are the colorful pigs. They look
Okay.
like corky.
Okay.
It's so cute.
How do you explain your research to the public at large, maybe your family or people who are not experts?
I just said that we just add the MSG to them to make them eat more. Because my parents, they don't really understand what I'm doing. So just you added the MSG to the food and they eat more. And then when you eat more, your body gets stronger. Yeah, and they make them stronger. And it's delicious, so yeah, they are happy. So they don't have diarrhea. So I just told them that, like, oh, you're studying on MSG, but actually no, I'm studying just glutamate. But do not eat too much of the MSG because it contains sodium. It's bad for your kidney. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we are welcoming Eden Winslow.
Everyone, if you can, I want you to lift your hands in front of you and just wiggle your fingers like this. Great. And then make a fist. And lastly, do a pinch. Awesome. You can lower your hands. Thank you. Now, what most of you just did with very little thought is actually incredibly complex from an engineering, neuroscience, and prosthetics perspective. In order to move our hands and our fingers, our brain has to first form an image, a plan of what it wants to do. Then it sends signals down the nerves into the muscles in the forearm, which flex to move your hands. Prosthetic limbs hinge on the assumption that all of these pathways are still intact, which is known to be true for someone who developed a hand and lost it later in life. We can use sensors and machine learning techniques to read the electrical signals in the remaining muscles and control a robotic hand to do whatever grasp the person wants. But what about children who were born without their hand? Do they still have a picture of the missing hand in their brain? Can they send signals down to control a body part that never developed? It's historically been assumed not, which has severely limited the accessibility of high-tech options for children, leaving them almost exclusively with just an open-closed prosthetic hand. But the reality is that no one has studied this population in depth before. So, my research the past 4 years has involved traveling to children's hospitals around the country, working with kids as young as 5 years old who were born without a hand. I put sensors on their arms, as many as can fit, and ask, hey, can you imagine moving your arm into a fist? Can you imagine moving your arm into a pinch? And then taking it a step further, can you imagine moving your arm halfway to a fist? Can you imagine squeezing very hard and then squeezing very soft? I'm trying to figure out, do children born without a hand have the same capabilities with their brain and their muscles as someone who lost a limb later in life? And they do. These children can imagine moving a hand they have never had and produce at least 10 unique hand movements with their muscles. They can change the level of closure and the level of force they want to use. We even see evidence that their muscle dexterity improves with age at a similar rate as typical motor development. This has profound implications for the care that thousands of children receive. We still have some unanswered questions, like what is going on in a kid's brain when they're moving a hand that's not there? But in showing these kids are incredibly capable, we're already changing the narrative of the field, proving they have the innate ability to use advanced devices. Which means that one day, all of the advanced functions currently available just to adults, like making whatever grasp they want, can also be made accessible to pediatrics. So, the next time you give a fist bump or are debating how to make a heart with your hands, remember that our hands are pretty complicated, but even being born without them doesn't need to hold a person back.
So you work with kids.
I do.
How difficult is that? What are the challenges?
It is a lot of fun, but like I said, working with a wide age range, and so when it comes to the 5-year-olds, we're running a 4-hour-long experiment. And so if you know any 5-year-olds, it is hard to get them to stay still and stay on task for that long. So yeah, it just involves bringing in a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and then also just reminding them very frequently what they're supposed to be doing, because they frequently forget. But at the same time, then, the teenagers are pretty easy then, pretty chill to work with. You just kind of talk about school and life while they're doing different motions. So yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's very rewarding. I've really enjoyed the experiences.
For the younger ones, do you need the caregivers, the parents, to be around?
Yes, the caregivers, the parents, they're usually very, just right there with the kid, and that is so, so helpful. So they're the ones who are really helping remind the kid of what to do, bribing them with gummy bears, that happens. So yeah, very thankful for the parents.
When you finish, you talked about both hands, and I'm wondering if what you do with one arm can be extended to both.
Yeah. So all the kids that I'm working with, they're born with one hand and without the other. And so there is very likely some learning that is going on in the brain. We can apply what we know with one hand to the one that they're missing. That being said, being born without either hand is a much, much more rare condition. And so this is already a pretty small population. So we're open for recruitment, but we haven't actually gotten any patients. Okay. That being said, we wouldn't want to underestimate them, because we know how that has gone.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Neupauer.
Picture a worm. Perhaps the thought makes you cringe. "Oh no, your dog has worms," your vet exclaims. That unlocks a whole can of worms, your friend sighs. Or your coworker explains, "John really wormed his way into that position." But what if I told you that worms could unlock the secrets of uncured diseases that ruthlessly attack our brains and nervous systems? Diseases like ALS and Alzheimer's. Nematode worms lie at the center of my work to better understand neurodegenerative diseases. These millimeter-long worms are a powerful disease model due to their highly simplified nervous system of 302 neurons, all in an easy-to-image, transparent body. But what exactly are we looking for when we image these worms under the microscope? Well, we can view the highly branched structures of neurons that allow them to receive, process, and send signals throughout the nervous system and brain. And to understand exactly how important this structure is to the function of neurons, look no further than the thousands of neurodegenerative conditions where we observe altered neuron morphology. Furthermore, my lab has, among many others, identified mutations implicated in neurodegeneration that also disrupt these branching patterns in the worms. But there's one critical problem in studying the branching patterns of neurons. They're unfortunately very difficult to quantify. So if you bring your attention to the upper left-hand corner of the screen, I could ask you, what's the difference between this healthy neuron and this diseased neuron? And each one of you listening could provide a unique explanation as to what's going on here. Just like my example, current methods rely on the human eye. And not only is this a very slow way of quantifying neuron branching patterns, but it's also incredibly unreliable and ambiguous because different people will interpret the same image differently. That's where my research comes in. I'm leveraging the power of computers and machine learning to quantify neuron branching patterns with unprecedented objectivity, detail, and efficiency. Even in the early stages of development, my software is already beginning to uncover differences between the diseased and control worms. Specifically, I've found the diseased worms to contain wavier neuron branches, defects in the angles between the branches, and a redistribution of branches towards the center of the neuron. So it is my hope that these new ways of analyzing neurons will allow us to better understand neurodegenerative diseases and ultimately to end them one worm at a time. Thank you.
So applying machine learning, artificial intelligence is what everyone is trying to do now. You're at the forefront of that. Can you tell us what challenges you found in implementing machine learning to this particular research?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people are thinking about, how complicated the computational setup is and all of that. Actually, the most difficult part of machine learning is that the computer needs to learn just like us. It has to be shown thousands of examples. And, we need to show them those examples. We have to create data to train them with. And in this case, if, for example, we're teaching the computer how to trace the structures of these neurons, I have to manually trace a bunch of neurons first before the computer can learn how to do that.
Right. The reliability of the data is a key factor. You developed this for C. elegans. How do you extrapolate or expand to other organisms?
Yeah, so even though this is a particular organism, of course, there are, these branch structures in other neurons and other species, and we can, in biology, we can label neurons of any species with fluorescent markers, fluorescent tags. And so the general idea of putting through a workflow where we would have to extract the general shape and then process different quantities on those branches would pretty much be the same regardless of what organism we're looking at.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Our next speaker is Devi Jayakrishnan.
Imagine you're renovating your house. You want a nice, light, open space, so you clear out the clutter, boxes, excess storage. And without knowing it, you also remove load-bearing walls. At first, everything looks light, open. At first, everything still stands until it doesn't. Weight loss is the same way. We could remove all your bones and we would see weight loss, but that would be a disaster. At this time, we are in the middle of a massive shift in medicine with millions of people on GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, and they're losing 15% or more of their body weight. That is life-changing for a lot of people. But here's a question that we rarely ask. When we lose fat on GLP-1, what else are we losing? Fat is storage, but muscle, that's the structure. Muscle stabilizes blood glucose, supports metabolism, and it protects us as we age. So when clinical research showed that some of the weight we lose on GLP-1 is due to lean mass, I wanted to take a closer look. See, lean mass, that's a vague word. It could include water, organs, connective tissue, and everything else that is not muscle or So we decided to take a closer look, and we created an animal model of obesity in mice, and we injected them daily with semaglutide. After that, I individually dissected out the muscles, removed the connective tissue, and I weighed them to 1,000th of a gram. So this is not noise, this is not imaging estimates, this is actual muscle weight. So here's what we found. Semaglutide, it causes a significant decrease in fat mass. So it clears out the storage just like it's supposed to. But in females, and only females, we found that there was a significant decrease in the weight of key muscles. Males, on the other hand, they did great. They lost fat, but they preserved their muscle mass. It was only females who lost both fat and muscle. So medical research has a long, frustrating history of ignoring and underrepresenting women. So our data adds to the body of evidence that shows that sex differences have an important impact. So this is not to reject these medicines. They are a powerful tool. But in the era of pharmacological weight loss, we need to ask more than just, how much weight did you lose? We need to be asking, what did you protect? Thank you.
It might be a little early to answer that question, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you imagine that the outcome of your research might change weight loss programs and techniques in the future?
Yeah, I would say because women are disproportionately affected in terms of muscle mass, there are things we can do for women taking Ozempic, like asking them to take more protein, right? Daily protein intake. We could also ask them to do weight training. So that would help prevent the muscle loss that they see while still maintaining fat loss.
Okay. Do you, I mean, this is a very timely topic, right? I mean, we talk about this type of weight loss regimen quite a bit these days, but what motivated you to get interested in this aspect of it?
Well, for the research, when I started my graduate career, I was very interested in looking at inter-organ crosstalk. So I was studying a hormone that was coming from the liver, and then we found out that GLP-1 goes into the brain and upregulates the hormone from the liver, and we wanted to see its other effects in adipose tissue, but also in skeletal muscle. And I was specifically interested in muscle because it's involved in type 2 diabetes, right? It's the main source of glucose disposal after a meal. So if you have less skeletal muscle, you might be more prone to the effects of type 2 diabetes.
You mentioned, as part of your presentation, the fact that the specificity of women, the impact on women, had been ignored before, which is not new. But it's still surprising that it's still happening, right? And so can you talk a little bit more about this? What do you think can be done to, including your research, to make that more visible, that need more visible?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to start from even the animal models, is to take time and money and put it into testing into female cohorts as well. Because I think part of it is that we had just assumed that they're going to have similar effects, maybe to a different degree. But as we've shown here, that might not necessarily be the case.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we welcome Mark Salazar.
I'm sure that most of us know at least one person in our lives who vapes. My brother tells me that he is so addicted to vaping, he vapes in his dreams, and will often wake up in the middle of the night just to take a puff. Last year, it was estimated that hundreds of thousands of middle and high school students in the US were heavily addicted to vaping, often to the point where stopping is extremely difficult. At the center of this worrying trend is the modern disposable e-cigarette. These devices are cheap, loaded with sweet flavors, packed with nicotine, and designed to last thousands of puffs. These features make them especially appealing to young people, which is why they're the most popular e-cigarette type among the youth. Although they're legally sold in the US and many other countries, they dominate the global market. Yet, despite their popularity, market trends have far outpaced research, and we still know surprisingly little about what's actually inside most of these devices. My graduate research is on metal emissions from popular disposable e-cigarettes. What I found was deeply concerning. Across all the brands I tested, these devices emitted excessive amounts of toxic metals known to harm the lungs and brain, including lead, nickel, and antimony, many of which were at concentrations known to increase the risk of cancer. In some cases, this was due to the use of lead-based alloys inside the devices, which sit in direct contact with an acidic nicotine liquid. When these devices are used, lead and other toxic metals can leach into this liquid and transfer to the aerosols that users inhale. When I compared the lead emissions from these devices to traditional cigarettes, I found that a day's worth of puffs from one brand could expose a user to as much lead as smoking 19 packs of cigarettes in a single day. This was frightening. Lead affects our nervous system, and there is no safe level of exposure. Even very low levels can impair brain development, particularly in children and adolescents. And once lead enters the body, it doesn't just disappear. It can remain in the bones for decades, potentially being released later on in life, especially during pregnancy and breastfeeding. This means that mothers and their children can be exposed to lead accumulated from earlier in the mother's life. To better understand the health effects of using these products, I conducted a month-long exposure study with mice using the lead-emitting brand I identified. I was shocked by what I found. After just 4 weeks, I observed lung injury and significant accumulation of lead in the bones of the exposed animals, with the females taking on more lead than the males. E-cigarettes are often assumed to be safer than traditional cigarettes. However, my research indicates that disposable e-cigarettes can be a significant source of toxic metal exposure, especially for young people whose lungs, brains, and bones are still developing. If we want to protect the next generation, we need a clear understanding of what's inside these products. We must ensure that research keeps pace with evolving market trends. Thank you.
So how did you come about to study e-cigarettes? What brought you to this topic?
I kind of stumbled onto it by accident. Initially, when I came back to grad school, I wanted to study opioid pharmacology. That didn't work out for me, and I met my current PI, Brett Poulin, and he brought me in, and he was like, hey, do you want to work on this e-cigarette project? So I just took a chance with it, and I couldn't be any happier.
Do you, I mean, you made a strong point about the disposable nature and how that leads to all the effects that you described. Are those effects completely absent from the non-disposable e-cigarettes, or?
Not necessarily, but they're more often seen in these disposables, just considering the way they're made, but also the type of e-cigarette that they are. So when these things are used, they're accumulating these metals, and they last a really long time. And so they end up getting more and more toxic the more you use them, as opposed to older versions where you're throwing them out earlier, or you can change out the juice or the coils, so there's less potential for these metals to accumulate.
You made quite a strong point also about the impact on youth and young users. Has there been a study, or maybe that's part of what you're trying to do, of the differential impact on adults versus kids?
To the best of my knowledge, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure there's probably other research groups working on that.
Right. Do you, one of the impacts that we see, well, I wanted to get to the blueberry ice cream thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with a better question than I had in my head. Isn't there a targeting of?
Absolutely. Yeah, some of these products, some of these newer ones have games on them, they have phones, they're made to put in backpacks. Yeah, so they're deliberately targeted.
All right, thank you. Oh, I'm going to move this. Thank you. All right, so thank you all for the wonderful presentations. We will now open the voting for the People's Choice Award. All of you here can see the QR code, and you can use that to access the survey tool. Our virtual attendees, please click on the link that should have popped up on the chat box, and you'll be able to access the survey there. Voting will be open for 15 minutes. During this time, you should also feel free to stretch, whether you're here or at home. Stretch your legs, go use the restroom, etc. But I'd like for everyone to be back here no later than 2:15, so that gives you 10 minutes, really. Because at that point, we're going to start the 100th Grad Slam panel. So see everyone back here soon. Thank you. All right. Welcome back. As I mentioned when we started this year, we are celebrating 100 years of graduate education in Davis. And to help with that commemoration, we have a special panel conversation planned today. We invited back our previous Grad Slam winners to join us on Zoom. And so we're honored to have them here today. I would like now to invite Professor Archana Venkatesan, our faculty director of the Grad Pathways Institute, up here to conduct our panel.
Thank you all, and thank you to our panelists for joining us. And before we get started, I just wanted to say congratulations to our top 10 Grad Slam. It was so inspiring to hear all of you talk about your incredible research. Several Nobel Prize winners clearly in the audience. So welcome everybody to this very special panel to commemorate 100 years of graduate education in Davis by honoring the history and legacy of UC Davis's Grad Slam. And we're going to do so by recognizing our previous winners and engaging them in a robust and substantive conversation about graduate education, scholarly impact, and the evolving landscape of the field. The session aims to reflect on past achievements while looking forward to opportunities for innovation and deeper engagement in this competition. So before we get started, I'm going to invite our panelists to introduce themselves briefly by telling us their name, the year they won Grad Slam, their area of study, and what they're doing now. And because they're on Zoom, I'm going to just introduce them based on their the way they appear on the screen. So I'll start with Amelia.
Hi, congratulations everybody. As you mentioned, my name's Amelia. I got my PhD in animal behavior and I won the Grad Slam in 2020. I'm currently doing a postdoc and I am in Sweden right now. So Grad Slam can take you all over the world.
Was that me? Sorry.
Yes,
didn't
Sam.
hear the audio.
Yes, Sam.
Yes, hi. I'm Sam Westrick. I am the 2017 Grad Slam winner. It's been a little while. My degree was in genetics, and I work for a biotech company based out of the Bay Area.
Thank you. Alice?
Hi, everyone. Congratulations to the finalists. My name is Alice Dien. I won the Grad Slam in 2022. I'm a PhD candidate in biological systems engineering. I'm graduating this quarter, and then next month I'm actually doing a TEDx talk, which I think the Grad Slam was a pretty stepping stone for me to have the courage to do that. So just as Amelia was saying, Grad Slam takes you places.
Katie?
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Murphy. I was the winner in 2019, and that same year I also won the UC-wide Grad Slam. I have a PhD in plant biology, and now I lead a research team at a nonprofit plant science research institute in St. Louis, Missouri.
Tuka?
Hello everyone, I'm Tuka Zokai. I won Grad Slam in 2018 while doing my master's in public health at UC Davis. I'm now a doctorate in public health candidate, hopefully 1 year left. Just defended my dissertation proposal. And I'm currently the senior health policy analyst at the California Dental Association. And my topic was on oral health access. So a lot of that Grad Slam work really informed the rest of my career.
Thank you, and we'll round it out with Yara.
Hello everyone, I'm Yara. I was last year's Grad Slam winner, 2025, and I am a pharmacology and toxicology PhD candidate in my 5th year, still here at UC Davis, hopefully looking to transition into my career in the next 6 months, not 6 years, 6 months to a year, hopefully.
Well, thank you all so much. And some of you have already touched on the first question, but let's get a deeper answer. So how has participating and winning Grad Slam continued to influence your work? And perhaps Katie and Sam, you could start us off, and if the others have something to add, please do. Sam, would you like to go first?
Sure. So my work these days really is all about communicating to people. I work for a biotech company, as I mentioned, and we work with the US Food and Drug Administration. And so these days, much more of my day is spent talking to people about science than it's spent actually doing science. And when I first started off, I was doing a lot of individual work, and I was an individual contributor. But the more senior you grow and the more time that you spend in your career, the more you find that your day-to-day becomes less of doing the work yourself and more talking to others about it. And so doing Grad Slam really helped me figure out how to communicate my ideas succinctly and also get them in a way where people who are technically skilled but maybe not experts in my particular field are still able to understand and digest and get the message across.
Yeah, so Katie, would you sort of say your experience is similar, or how would you say it's different?
Yeah, I think similar in many ways. I did Grad Slam originally because I wanted the money, and I'm not afraid to say that. But I think I'm so thankful that along the way I gained so many skills in how to communicate. And I started my independent research group quite early in my career, and that is only because I know how to talk about science in a way that everyone can understand. And I think what surprises people is even other scientists need to be able to understand what you're talking about. And so when you learn to speak to non-scientists, it helps you talk to other scientists as well. So I'm really thankful for the skills that started with Grad Slam. I still do a lot of scientific outreach. And I think that really started as part of this competition.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, that was very clearly evident I'm a humanist, so all of these presentations, distilled the essence of the research and communicated in a way that you understood sort of the fundamentals, but also understood the stakes and what was actually being addressed. So it's clearly such an important role. So all of you, Grad Slam is an individual competition, but I think there's something about building community as well, because you're all doing this together. So could you reflect on how Grad Slam contributes to the sense of community among graduate students and faculty at UC Davis? And maybe Alice and Amelia, you could start us off here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start here. I think, first of all, I would assume the speakers have gone through that at this point, but to prepare your speech, you have to involve a lot of people, right? Like you have to really rehearse and have different audiences hear your story and your research and incorporate that feedback. So when I was preparing my talk, I got to meet a lot of different people and also from fields that weren't mine and weren't just my professors. So I think that's the first part of it. The other one is, I don't think any of us are doing research in isolation. So speaking about the work that we do is also an opportunity to highlight our research group and our faculty members and the different advisors that are helping in the science. And then thirdly, I think, and that's the one that maybe I wasn't aware of when I was participating in the competition, but there's a lot of opportunities that came after. Either for speaking engagements or for mentorship, right? So people who want to learn skills on how to share about their research or who are thinking of participating to Grad Slam themselves. So there was a lot of people who reached out or who I was able to meet or interact with because I did this competition. So I think I would say, just be very, do an intentional effort to seek out those mentorship opportunities, because I do think there's a lot of people who are trying to do this, but don't necessarily need that little courage given to them of hey, you can do this, especially myself as an international student, English not being my first language, just encouraging others to do it as well, I think was a meaningful part of this journey.
Well, thank you. Amelia.
So as I mentioned, I won in 2020. So I think my experience was different from a lot of people's. I recorded my preliminary round of it in my garage with a backdrop that I had jerry-rigged. And I did a lot of the preparation by myself and sort of coerced my housemates into listening to me talk about my speech over and over again. So I think for me, the community aspect was maybe very different from other people's, but one of the reasons that I most loved the Grad Slam, I think that year was a year that I was spending a lot of time in isolation, and I had sort of forgotten some of the things I loved most about my research and I loved about science. And getting to interact with all of the people as part of Grad Slam and getting a chance to, even on Zoom, just to share the things that I love about science was so meaningful to me. And I was finishing up my dissertation at that same time. And I really think getting to think about my research for the Grad Slam helped me to feel more connected to my research and more connected to all of the students in a way that I definitely wouldn't have if I was not getting this opportunity. So it definitely really shaped the end of my PhD and the way that I felt connected to the school, for sure.
Well, thank you. I mean, of course, 2020 was a year that was so it was almost such a huge rupture, and I can see how something like Grad Slam, even though it was all about individual presentation, ends up being a way to remember why we do what we do, why the university succeeds, and university is university because we are in a community and we're talking about our research. So thank you for that, I think, very important reminder. So speaking of graduate education, we are celebrating 100 years of education in Davis this year. So graduate education has evolved quite dramatically over the last 100 years. What are some of the defining qualities of graduate education today that you think are the most important? And Yara, if we could start off with you, and then Sam, if you take the baton from her.
Absolutely. So I think one of the key defining qualities of being a graduate student and graduate education in the modern day is that it is intentional. We are expected not only to be subject matter experts and to have a strong understanding of our work and what we do, but we also have this increasing need to be adaptable, resilient, and able to really communicate things. I mean, the world is becoming more increasingly complex and nuanced, and the problems that we need to solve are becoming. So I think as graduate students, we have to kind of cross more boundaries in our training and have to wear a couple more hats than perhaps we would in the past to be able to bridge gaps across disciplines and work collectively with people to effectively make change and implement change. And of course, communication is at the core of that. So, being graduate students today, and I think we have a lot of responsibilities on us, and that is a good thing. So I think it's to train people to know how to not just produce knowledge, but learn how to make that knowledge meaningful and have meaningful impact across many different dimensions. So yeah, I think it's broader and more holistic than it once was, not just being scholarly experts, but professional, developed people. Yeah.
I think that's very true. Sam, would you echo that? And you're in the biotech world, so these are all things very much in your horizon, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Yara hit it nail right on the head that communication is important. One of the other things that I've found is that as graduate students and graduates, we're expected to be experts, but you also have to have a deep level of knowledge. And one of the things that's come up a lot that I compare this to is ChatGPT and other AI algorithms, where they are great at providing shallow knowledge. You can ask an AI algorithm about just about anything, and it gives you a nice, polished, confident answer. But then if you start digging into it and you start wanting to get into why and how and give this in an analogy that makes sense, it starts to fall apart. And so the use for us graduate students is that we're able to say, let me explain this in multiple different ways. Let me have different strategies for how I talk to one audience versus a different audience. Let me put this into the context of my audience so that they're able to connect to it more naturally. And so that has, I think, always been a need for graduate students, is to be able to speak with that sort of depth of knowledge, but it's even more important these days with the way the technology is shaping up in the world.
Yeah, and this is a question, I think, because we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of graduate education at Davis. So I think it would be really helpful to also hear from some of our other panelists, like Tuka. How do you think that graduate education has, what are the defining qualities of graduate education, and how did it prepare you for Grad Slam and for life beyond?
Yeah, I think to build off what Sam was saying with accessible information, we also have a lot of accessible misinformation that is often shared in a more engaging way than the evidence-based information that has nuance, that has evidence that has been reviewed from different either peer-reviewed studies or systematic reviews as experts that engage with this at, with graduate level education and partnership. So my recommendation is, when preparing for the Grad Slam, to also understand the privilege that there is to be someone who is an expert in the field. And even as a newer, you could say, leader in this space, sometimes that's the best place to know how to address misinformation, as someone who potentially has engaged with different platforms, looking at TikTok, Instagram. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but taking those kinds of tools of how you present information to different audiences can help in the graduate space. I will also say, as being in the public health program, and most recently this year, public health has been removed as one of the professional designations. I think there's a lot of value in graduate studies to continue to be leaders in professional spaces and to still value that you are a professional in graduate education and professional education, even if there are federal changes to the designation of your education title. So I think Grad Slam is a great way to be amongst peers and to continue to demonstrate how your different fields are part of the larger professional communication space.
Yeah, thank you. Tuka, I'm curious, Amelia, since you're based in Sweden, correct? Did I hear that right? What do you see in terms of the world in Sweden and Europe? And is it different in the way in which you communicate your expertise than in the United States?
I think it's a really good question. So I'm doing my postdoc and I'm working on the effect of pharmaceuticals in wastewater and how that influences fish behavior and physiology, which in some ways is really easy to talk to all kinds of people about because people like fish and there's a really easy hook. And in other ways it's hard because it's kind of a political topic wherever you go. And I think one of the issues that I have had internationally, which I think makes sense for people who've come to the United States or people who've gone other places, is that there can be language barriers and there can be sort of colloquial barriers. But definitely, I think one of the things that Grad Slam benefited me for in moving to Sweden is being able to think about what the core message of my research is. And I think that's important if you're talking to people in the United States, if you're talking to people in Sweden, if you're talking to people, I lived in Scotland before this, that was really helpful for me, is being able to just have that practice thinking about what is the thing that I would tell a stranger on the street about my research. And I think obviously the political landscape is different in Sweden than it is in the US currently. But those are things that I think we're always taking into consideration when we're thinking about the way that we talk about our science and trying to gauge what is the way that I can connect with this individual person and tell this story about my research. And whether that's in Sweden or the United States, whether that's your grandmother or your Uber driver, I think some of those differences really matter and some of them don't, because we're always trying to shift that message to get the core principle through while still making it meaningful to our audience.
Yeah, so the through line I'm hearing from all of you is the importance of public communication or the communication of research that you're doing that's expert and very specialized to a broader audience. But we've sort of hinted at this already, but we hear a lot about the lack of public trust in higher education these days. And Tuka alluded to the removing public health as a professional designation by the federal government lately. And this is especially true of graduate education or expertise in any respect. You can just ask Dr. Google, and the answer that Google spits out is often understood to be more reliable than an expert who has spent years studying a topic. So what role does clear scholarly communication play, do you think, in maintaining public trust in education and scholarship? Or perhaps we could even ask the question differently, maybe take it one step earlier than that. How do you think that scholarly communication can help develop that public trust, especially at a time when that public trust is at an all-time low? So Katie, could you sort of maybe start us off there?
Yeah, so I study plant science, and there's a lot of mistrust of plant science in general, but especially genetically modified organisms. So I really feel that it's a responsibility of mine to help educate people and correct misinformation. And I personally think I agree with you, there's a lot of mistrust of higher education. And folks I have talked to say, I'm paying taxes that go towards higher education and research, and they don't see the results because oftentimes they're publishing in journals they either don't have access to or they just can't understand the language. So I see science communication as an obligation that all scientists should be doing, because these people, everyone's paying for it, right? They're paying for the research we're doing. They deserve to understand the results and communicate it in a way they can understand. And I think if we do that, we'll not only establish more trust in higher education and what is happening at universities, but we will also help people better understand, in my case, the food we're eating, but I think that's true of public health, of medicine, of the humanities. People will be able to make better choices in their lives because they actually have accurate scientific information that they can understand.
Yeah, thank you. Yara, how would you sort of add to that?
That was very well said, Katie. I mean, I think to add to that really is, I think clearly communicating how we obtain our information, why it matters, why it's credible, and that we as as people educated in the graduate system have the capability to discern between information that's real and misinformation. I think being able to communicate that to people, all of these factors, is key to getting them to trust you. And to trust you over some random Google search that's, acquiring its information from Facebook posts, in addition to PubMed searches, and kind of feeding you what you want to hear based off of the prompt that you give it as well. Touching more, on kind of the AI comments that Sam and Tuka were talking about earlier. We really do live in an age where people have grown to mistrust what experts have to say and have taken it upon themselves to find the answers. So if we can demonstrate to people that there is a reason that knowledge is acquired in a specific way and is validated in a specific way, we can reestablish that public trust and in turn really implement change.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because the next question, you've set it up beautifully, Yara. The next question that I have is, if this is so important, right, that we need to communicate our expertise in ways that make not only teach our communities what we know, but also the stakes that are at hand. So it's clearly something that we need to integrate into graduate programs. It has to be a part of graduate education, because one doesn't sort of learn how to do this, learn how to communicate like Athena springing fully formed from Zeus's head. It's not something that just emerges intuitively. You have to be taught how to do this. So how do you think graduate programs ought to be better preparing students to communicate their research to the general public, to policy makers, to community partners, and to government stakeholders, and so on? How do you, what kinds of things, I suppose practical things, do you think that graduate programs ought to be doing in order to prepare our students to undertake this? So Alice, can you start us off? And I'm curious because you're in your last stages of your graduate program, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're very good at training our scientists to communicate with their peers, right, or experts in their fields. It's something we train for from the very beginning of our programs. We're not as good as training ourselves to communicate to diverse audiences, including, general public. And when you have opportunities to do that, they're usually high stakes, like the Grad Slam competition, for example. You're already entering a competition, right? So it's a whole different level than having multiple opportunities throughout your graduate education to practice that. I used to work as a graduate writing fellow, and this notion of audience is one that students struggle with. Like, who's your audience? How do you communicate the same thing in a different way depending on who's your audience? And doing public communication like this, if you think about it, it's really hard because you're balancing scientific rigor with accessibility. And if you don't strike the right balance, you either lose people or you lose credibility. So you have to really hit the right middle there, and it's something we don't have a lot of opportunities to practice. I think graduate programs need to really create opportunities, and it can be through seminars. Ideally, it would be part of a curriculum, but just engaging with people outside of academia academia, bringing them in, having them interact with students early on so you practice that skill from the beginning, I think is super important. And then the other thing that I will say is that, you know, in a lot of when we write or we do posters or presentations for expert audiences, the goal is to walk people through your whole research, right, from the beginning to the end. Your methods, your conclusions, when you're doing public speaking, I think the real thing you're aiming for is to get people interested in your topic. So it's almost like an elevator pitch. You don't need to give the whole story. You just have to get them interested so they seek out further opportunities or reach out later to learn more about what you're actually doing. So I think these are important things that should really be part of the curriculum in graduate school.
I'm curious, Tuka, since you're also in the last stages of your degree, I'm curious as to how you reflect on the kinds of training to do this public-facing work, especially since you are in a field that is public health. It has the word for public in its very title. How does your program sort of train you to translate the expert and very nuanced work that you do in a way that is accessible to a broad and very diverse audience? Like policymakers are different kinds of beasts than the grandma who might be looking for an answer for X or Y. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so true about knowing your audience. You know, I will be talking about fluoridation policy in one space, and then I'll get videos sent on Instagram from a family member about how fluoride is going to cause neurodevelopmental changes. And it's always about how do you best communicate like the nuance of concentration, right, and dose response for different audiences. From a policy space, you kind of need to tap into what does that individual value. And even though I'm in public health and policy in my day job, I do wish that all graduate studies did integrate policy in their work, regardless of the field, because all of us are going to be impacted by the policies in which we work within. And understanding that more and having either like a mock city council meeting or mock testimony, I think can really help not just understand your topic better, but also give you a new appreciation for how it impacts the community as a whole. So looking at computer science, there's a lot of different debates right now, and integrating that education within the time of your training can also help continue to support that engagement. So you're not just a scholar and then a practitioner in the field, but you're a scholar and that value of continued learning and impact carries beyond, you know, graduation day. Yeah. I do wish that that's kind of like my one wish for graduate studies, and hopefully UC Davis, I think, does this pretty well with something like Grad Slam and other opportunities, like even TEDx talks at UC Davis, to engage in more aspects of the real world and real applicability of your work. And it really helps us get outside of our graduate studies bubble too. We're so used to kind of working with our own peers, be it in medicine, biology, agriculture, literature. We're very much a bubble culture in academia. And I think breaking those barriers that I think the UC system does very well, and integrating into other fields and working with them to talk about policy, to talk about system changes is really valuable for long-term impact and change.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tuka. And I actually, you know, you've already kind of set us up to think about how Grad Slam could evolve to reflect emerging research fields, new media platforms, or the shifting graduate education landscape. We're all, you know, living this right now, right? The impact on, I do not need to tell this audience the impact of what federal funding cuts have done to graduate education. We're all feeling it, especially JP. So I'm wondering, how do you think Grad Slam as a platform can help us think about and reflect emerging fields of research? We heard some cutting edge research from our presenters today. Sam, perhaps you could start us off here.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the participants did a great job of this today, which is making a hook that draws people in. And one of the best ways to do that is to tie it to something that's cutting edge, something that's in the news, something that is making headlines, because that helps elevate the impact of your work. If you can say, my work is not just something that is in a dusty old corner of academia, but my work directly correlates to big things that are making headlines right now, people are going to be more interested in listening, and you're going to drive a better audience, drive a larger audience, and that will then help you with getting more interest in your work.
Great. And can I ask Tuka, what do you think?
Yes, I think a lot of it too has to do with attention span. We used to have an attention span of, let's say, 105 seconds, right? Like just 20 years ago. And now, I don't know, it says it's 47 seconds online, but I think it's more like 15. So we have very short attention spans. They're getting shorter. We're very visual. And I think the new generation is really tapping into that. But I think across generations, we can be more visual in our communications and be very direct and, like Sam said, catchy, and make it personable as fast as possible. I think Grad Slam does that in a great way, because things we're used to writing 10-page academic papers about are now being distilled in just a few minutes. But the better we can engage with things like TikTok and Instagram, the more we can learn how to communicate to different audiences. During COVID, I started my own Instagram called Tuka Tooth. Again, I work in oral health. And it kind of taught me a little bit about how to do communications. I still have a lot to learn. But you know, since I'm so used to talking with dentists, lawyers, and politicians, I think it also helps to kind of reframe and be like, who is still left out of these conversations, but who's being impacted by these conversations that they're not a part of. So I think the bigger table that we build and learn more about different communication styles, the stronger we can get our messages across and have the impact we hope all our work has, because we're spending hours and years doing this work. I like to compare it to a tree falling in the woods. You know, if it doesn't make a sound if no one's there, if we're doing all this research and publishing in these academic spaces, is it making noise where we intend it to? So I think there's a lot of opportunity to get even more bite-sized in our science communications.
Yeah, thank you. So well said. I think one of the great things about being in a university, I think, is it's filled with people who are driven by curiosity or driven by a desire to solve some kind of problem. And we're a lot of obsessives, right? Like you're not going to go to sleep until you solve that one problem, whatever that might be. And but it's also, I think, a fertile ground for a lot of introverts, people who like to spend time by themselves, even if they're in a lab setting. And so it's very difficult, I think, to train ourselves to become public facing, to translate that research to the outside world, to force ourselves to be a little bit more public. But increasingly, as the world has become both smaller and in some ways smaller, but we're also farther apart, the stakes of learning how to communicate this very specialized research that is driven by our curiosity is becoming so much more important. And I think our panelists have just done such a beautiful job in explaining not only why it is important to do this, but also how we do it. So as we wrap up the panel, and then we'll turn to the audience for some Q&A from you, I want to invite each of our panelists to give our competitors for this year's Grad Slam about what advice you would give our UC Davis Grad Slam top 10, not to see this not just as a competition, but as a platform that launches them to engage in something that will have a long-term impact. So if I could invite each of our panelists to speak, that would be wonderful. Yes, Sam.
Yes, I actually have to run, so this is a perfect chance for me to sign off. I would say to all of the participants, emphasize this. I think I got more interest when I was out searching for a job by mentioning the fact that I was a finalist in Grad Slam and that I won this competition than I did by my multi-year research. This is the sort of thing where, as has been said before, a lot of scientists are introverts. A lot of scientists are really great researchers, but they don't like talking about their work, and they're often not as practiced and polished at it as they could be. And so having the skills to be able to not just do the work, but be able to explain it to a wide audience, to get up in front of either experts or lay people and talk about your work in a way that both groups are able to latch on and understand, That's an incredibly valuable skill, and that should not be downplayed. That should be emphasized.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you so much for participating and for giving us your time on a Friday. We really appreciate it. A round of applause for Sam before he signs off. And then I'll invite Amelia to, and I'll just go by how you appear on my screen. So Amelia, if you could take that question as well.
I think we've been talking a lot about science communication, and I think the thing that I would like to remind all the grad studies finalists is that as you enter the world, there are sort of two things that you are communicating. One of them is your exact research and the exact thing that you are fascinated with. And the other, I think, is the more general one, which is just that people who have gotten PhDs, who have spent forever studying something, are trustworthy. And I think those are actually different. That I think it's one thing to be single-mindedly focused on getting everybody to understand the outcome of your research. And it's another thing to remind yourself that ultimately, maybe the small step you can do is make someone walk away from a conversation with you thinking, man, this person is trustworthy. And maybe they weren't even talking about their research. They were communicating in another way, but that might mean that they're more likely to read anything and be more open to it if it comes from someone who has studied it, who has worked in that field. And so I think just thinking about the ways that you can be a personable, likable, welcoming face that instills trustworthiness in all researchers, I think that can really magnify your impact, not just for the little piece that you are contributing to science or whatever field you're a part of, but sort of that whole holistic community of people who are working on important topics.
Yeah, great, thank you. It's so affirming, such a wonderfully affirming message. Thank you, Amelia. Alice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna add on to what Amelia and Sam said, and really, like, you have to think, it's not only about sharing research, like, we're all working on very complex topics, right? Getting a PhD is all about complexity, and if you participate in Grad Slam, if you have a passion for this type of translation, it means you have a passion for breaking down complexity and making it accessible for other people. And that's a very valuable skill to have in any field or any job you decide to do. So whether you decide to be a faculty, then you're probably going to be teaching or mentoring people, and you want to be able to have those communication skills. But if you go in the industry, it's equally valuable, because if you're doing R&D, for example, you want to make sure you can communicate your work with marketing or with the commercial side of the business. So it's just really something to market and to bring forward as you're having conversations about your future.
Well, thank you. Katie.
All right, I have two pieces of advice. And the first is something that I was worried about when I started getting more into science communication, because similar to Tuka, I made a TikTok during my postdoc to do more public science communication, and all this was sort of kicked off by Grad Slam. And I was really worried that people were not going to take me seriously as a scientist. It's hard enough being in a male-dominated field, and I thought, oh, I'm here making these fun videos and making jokes about corn. I still want to be taken seriously. And I just want to assuage the fears of the current participants that you will still be taken seriously. You can feel free to be yourself and do public science communication in whatever format works best for you. It's only elevated by science and the profile of the science that I do. My second piece of advice is I hope you celebrate, because just participating and presenting today, it's very stressful and is a huge accomplishment. It's just the start of what I hope for all of you is a fruitful scientific communication for the rest of your career, even if you don't become a professional science communicator. But there's something to celebrate today and this weekend. So after this, I hope you relax and do something fun.
Well said, Katie. I think we are so driven by the end goal that we don't really think about all the little steps that take us there. So definitely, pat on the back for all of our wonderful finalists. Tuka.
I will say to continue the work where you are right now. So yes, rest and celebrate. and use the work that you've already put in to go beyond Grad Slam and continue to connect. To kind of go back to where Sam said at the beginning of this was a great way to start conversations with others. I'm a big fan of finding your professional home if you haven't already. I'm very involved with the American Public Health Association, and my Grad Slam research was my first submission to APHA, and I'm now chair-elect of the oral health section. So it's been a long journey, and it all started with Grad Slam. So I really recommend you look at the American Association for the Advancement of Science or the American Public Health Association, which I think aligns with some of the topics I heard today. So I think there's a great space for you to find your professional home and to share this research amongst your people as well. We talked a lot today about being cross-cutting and going beyond your bubble, but also we want a solid foundation for where you can continue to lean on your peers beyond graduate studies at UC Davis. So again, if you haven't already, I think you've already done the work. I think this would all be very interesting topics at different conference spaces. And I think they have career-lasting connection-building opportunities. So that's something you can even do this week.
Thank you so much, Tuka. And then Yara.
All right, so I'll keep it simple since all of the panelists very nicely give some great tips. Don't treat this as a one-day performance, right? Just when Grad Slam is over, treat this as a way to build a version, the best version of your research story, and continue to build on that, continue to grow it, continue to market it, leverage it to get jobs, to network and build your community. As someone who won last year, I'm still seeing the benefits of Grad Slam. I'm in the process of applying to jobs. I'm definitely utilizing this as a stepping stone into industry, and I'm seeing some traction. So I would say definitely, keep, even if you don't win, the competition is just one part of it. At the end of the day, you got to this point because you can tell the story of what you do. Keep up that passion. And to echo, what Katie said, congrats. It's not easy to get here. You've done great. These are really interesting, entertaining talks, and I'm sure everybody will have a very fruitful career utilizing communication. You've all demonstrated that you can.
Well, thank you so much. And we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. So I'm happy to, do we have a mic for the audience questions, or shall I just ask people to speak loudly? Okay, speak loudly and I shall repeat. Questions for our esteemed guests? Yes.
This is for Yara in particular, because she also works on psychedelics. I'd be curious how you approach conversations where you bring up psychedelics and then people, I don't know, jump into like the kind of salacious myths around them. Just like how you approach conversations where people are coming in with like a lot of Joe Rogan-y baggage about the topic.
Yara, were you able to hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it? Okay.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay, so this is a question from Eli. He's one of our Grad Slam finalists, and he is asking a question about psychedelics and how you approach working on psychedelics, and how do you sort of tackle the immediate reaction, its salaciousness, or as he put it, the Joe Rogan-y effect of it. How do you kind of walk that line and while sort of say, hey, this is serious work, and there are important questions to be asked and answers to be received about this?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the delicate communication challenge of my career that I've come to find is I'm always kind of teetering back and forth between, playing on the psychedelic angle because it attracts engagement. People want to know more about psychedelics. As was mentioned, I think in the first talk, the psychedelic renaissance is really, really a big thing. So it's a balance between, playing on that, and then of course you're going to get, some people's inherent biases coming into play, and that'll kind of affect the way that they interpret and understand what you're saying to them. But also understanding when it's critical to talk about psychedelics. So for me, for example, we study psychedelics in our lab as a way to regrow cellular structures that are lost in the brain. So depending on the question, sometimes I might not emphasize the psychedelic aspect because I don't want to lose the person, and I don't want them to focus on the wrong aspect where they start saying things to me like, oh, tell me about the hallucinogenic effects or the mystical experiences, the behavioral sides. These are, of course, relevant, but sometimes it's depending on what you're trying to convey to somebody. Sometimes you might I gloss over the whole psychedelic aspect so that the actual neurotherapeutic aspect lands more so.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a mic now. Yeah? Yes, Beth.
Hi, yeah, my question is just when you're kind of communicating at this level, there seems to be, in my experience, kind of a tension between people wanting people to walk away with a perfect understanding of your topic because you care a lot about it, and then also maybe being okay with some assumptions on certain things to get to the bigger message or the bigger point you're trying to make, and how your experience with Grad Slam and then kind of as you moved on deals with that tension, or your thoughts on that?
Anyone, any of you wanting to take that? Katie.
I can take it. I like to say there's always pieces you'll have to sacrifice, whether that's in a 30-second meeting with someone, a 3-minute talk, or even in an hour, right? You can't tell the story of a PhD or all the background that people need. And so I try to focus on what's the most important takeaway, and then I build my story back from there. And sometimes the takeaway is just someone meeting a scientist and seeing that they're a trustworthy person. And then I'm going to dribble in bits of science in there that are really interesting, or things that I might catch someone so that they go and they read more. But I personally just acknowledge that they're not going to get everything, and I try to just sleep at night knowing that that's okay.
Great, thank you. Do we have any last questions? Well, if we don't, I want to take this opportunity to thank our wonderful panelists for their very thoughtful, but I also want to say very affirming responses and thoughtful and careful advice that they have given our Grad Slam finalists, as well as to our broader audience. I'm a faculty member, but I feel like I learned a lot from listening to all of you. And yeah, I work on 9th century South India and little texts, how do you tell people, hey, this matters? Because it's not curing cancer or helping Alzheimer's or, helping children without limbs. That's something that is tangible, that can be so this is something that I will take away from listening to you to think about how best to communicate this work. So I want to thank all of you for your time. Congratulations to Davis for 100 years of graduate education. It's a wonderful, wonderful education. And let's all gather here in a century to celebrate 200 years of graduate education at UC Davis. And once again, a very, very warm congratulations to our finalists who are doing such extraordinary work. Thank you all very much.
Hi, thank you.
All right. Oh, so I have the envelopes. Thank you, Archana, and thank you to our former and some continuing graduate students for the time. Now we're going to go to the awards portion of the day. We'll begin by announcing the winner of the People's Choice Award. Let me see if I have everything I need here. Okay. Where is it? There you go. Okay. So once I announce the name, the winner, please come join me up here, receive the trophy. The People's Choice Award goes to Jack Goon. Trophy.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so now to the third, I'm going to go in reverse, right? Third, second, and first prize for our 2026 UC Davis Grad Slam competition. Our third place prize for $1,000 is Alex Newpower. Good. All right. Our second place prize of $2,000 goes to Jack Goon.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And now for the first place Grad Slam winner, Eden Winslow. Well, congratulations. I got, oh, here we go. You got a certificate with it too. So the first place winner, as you saw, receives a $5,000 award. That's worth mentioning again. And will represent our campus on April 22nd at the University of California 2026 Grad Slam Finals event. In addition to, so I mentioned that already. Oh, no, I didn't mention that. Your name and your college names will go up on a permanent display here in Walker Hall. We actually have a plaque with the names of all the winners in your college, so you'll be there. So you can come visit, look at it. Congratulations again on this accomplishment, and I hope that you all will joining us. You will be joining us on April 22nd. So that event is also live streamed, so you'll be able, and we'll have the appropriate link on our website. You'll be able to join it and support the finalists. There is, if I remember correctly, they also have a People's Choice Award, so vote often. I don't think you can vote more than once. Just clarifying that. Another big thanks to our top 10 finalists. Thank you for participating. This was great.